Hey everyone, welcome back. And if it's your first time here, just plain welcome. Tell me something, folks. Why is it that Democrats are screaming so loudly about due process rights for illegal alien gang members and terrorist sympathizers while simultaneously trying to strip those due process rights from gun owners? That's not a stretch either. Let's understand this is actually happening. Since taking office, President Donald Trump has deported scores of people. We're talking about people are saying now the borders are secure. There's been flights out of the country every day to all over the place, mostly South America and Mexico, taking people who were in this country illegally, most of whom were criminals of some sort beyond just crossing the border illegally, and sending them back to their home country. Now, Democrats are all up in arms about that, and I just don't give a shit. All right, first of all, these are people who are not American citizens. They are not here legally. They're not afforded any of the normal protections afforded to individuals under the United States Constitution. There are a couple of people, though, who had green cards. They're immigrants, but, they came legally. They had green cards. They were clear to stay in the United States indefinitely. One of those is a man named Mohammed Khalil and Dr. Rasha Alloway, I think is how you pronounce her name. Don't give a shit. Both of them are currently being detained. They're going through, the process to be kicked out of the country because both of them have shown sympathies to terrorists. Now, under federal law, when you're here on a green card, you do not have the full spectrum of your constitutionally protected rights. You don't. One of those things is you're not supposed to provide support to terrorists. Now, whether or not what either of these people did rises to that level is something to yet be determined. Khalil was very much involved in the anti-Israeli protests at Columbia University. He was very careful not to let himself get caught up in anything, but he was apparently one of the ringleaders. Oh yeah, and he's pretty openly advocated in favor of Hamas. Holloway, on the other hand, she's a doctor at Brown University, but currently she's in hot water because she went to a funeral. It happened to be for a Hamas leader who was killed by Israel. Yeah, that's swell. Now, Holloway says that her sympathies are really with the individual's religious teachings and not his political teachings. I find that a little hard to swallow considering the way radical Islamists tend to view politics and religion as one and the same. On her phone were a bunch of pictures of other members of Hamas that she had tried to delete. In other words, it looks like she's a terrorist sympathizer. Democrats are absolutely losing their minds over this. You can't do that. These people deserve their due process rights. Yada, yada, yada. But here's the thing. They're getting them. They're going through a hearing. They have representation that will present evidence and try to block their deportation. This is how the system is supposed to work, and I actually am glad it is. I'm not comfortable with the idea of taking people who are in this country legally and just voluntarily shipping them out of the country for no reason. And it needs to be more than accusations, because while they don't have the full spectrum of American rights, the same rights that you and I would have as a citizen, they're still here legally, and we need to do things the right way. If for no other reason, then it's the right way. Currently, like I say, they're going through hearings. There's going to be a whole process, and that's good news. Gun owners, on the other hand, some of these same people who are screaming so loudly want various laws in place, particularly one at the federal level, that would do away with a certain degree of due process for American gun owners. What I'm talking about here are what we commonly call red flag laws. These are the laws that allow a court to say, yes, take this person's guns on someone saying, hey, they're a threat to themselves or a threat to others. Different states have different ways to do this, but it boils down to someone makes a claim, a judge hears the claim, says, Yep, we're going to take their guns. Police show up, take the person's guns, and they're disarmed. They lose their Second Amendment rights, at least for a time. Eventually, there's a hearing, and people do get a chance to present their side of the story. But because this is not a criminal case, they don't have a right to representation. This is obviously less than ideal because this is dealing with someone's fundamental right. In a way, at least in the way I look at it, it's not any fundamentally different than locking someone up. You're taking away their freedom in that case. Here you're taking away a fundamental, constitutionally protected right. And there's no due process until after the fact. Yes, you get a hearing, but you've been disarmed for who knows how long by the time that happens. Now, there's a couple of different types of due process in American law. There's substantive due process, which deals with your fundamental rights, including the first 8 amendments to the Bill of Rights. The Second Amendment is one of those, and you're denied that right. And there's procedural due process, which, among other things, gives you notice that this is happening and gives you an opportunity to speak on your behalf. Now, there's other things, including representation, right to present evidence, etc., that aren't universal. Different courts have different standards of how much due process they can afford you. But the ability to speak in your defense is one of the most fundamental aspects of substantive due process. Red flag laws, you don't get it, right? And these laws literally can be done at the drop of a hat. Someone who is just a little freaked out by your choice of language can theoretically petition the courts, have your guns taken for however long, all based on nothing. There was a case in Colorado where a woman tried to claim that she had been in a relationship with a police officer and that he was a danger to himself or someone else. The problem was, this is the officer who shot and killed her son in the line of duty in a suicide by a cop case. Now, luckily, this was easily identified and she was prosecuted, but we don't know how many other people have been stripped of their gun rights because someone made up something. And when you look at the research, such as it is on the efficacy of red flag laws, we don't see a lot. Probably the most useful study found that for every 17 to 20-something red flag orders issued, it prevents one suicide. But that means at least 16 other people are stripped of their right to keep and bear arms for no frickin' reason. A lot of proponents will say, yeah, this is useful for stopping mass shootings. Well, Colorado had a red flag law in place, and Colorado Springs still happened. Florida passed a red flag law after Parkland, and there was still a shooting in Jacksonville. The problem is people who are planning mass shootings aren't always signaling everything. And even if they are, most people don't necessarily think of it that way. A lot of people will look at their loved one and go, yeah, he wouldn't do that. But Democrats, they're totally fine with doing away with due process rights in these cases. But for people who aren't even American citizens, for people who aren't even necessarily here legally, for people who are terrorist simps, suddenly due process is all important. Now, I don't give a rat's ass about Venezuelan gang members being deported without due process. They weren't here legally to begin with. They had no evidence they were here legally. Send them back. If it turns out they find their green card or their paperwork, sure, our bad. Since they're gang members, that probably didn't happen. I am fine with providing due process rights for people who are here legally, but we want to deport them because of some violation of their agreement. Totally cool with that. Let's find out, let's get to the truth, and let's handle it correctly. All I'm asking is to give us, gun owners, the same freaking ability. Due process. It's not too much to ask for, and anybody who says that red flag laws give you due process has clearly been smoking some shit that comes out of Colorado. I'm sorry, that's the long and the short of it. But look, That's my take, right? That's one guy's opinion. I want to know what you have to think. What do you say? Should immigrants get due process at all, even if they're on the green card? Should that be ignored completely for people who are sympathizing with Hamas? Should people accused of being here illegally and being in gangs also get due process? Are red flag laws good, bad, indifferent? I want to know what you think. While you're at it, down in the comments, hit that like, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, all that jazz. That way you'll know when I've got videos coming out. And really, I could use all the help with the algorithm I can get. Also, if you want to support the channel, there is a link down below for the Liberty store. Tons of Liberty-themed goods, glasses, drinks, home decor, the works. Tons of stuff, awesome stuff. Check it out. Again, link down below. And on that note, I'm going to wrap it up, and I will see you all in the next video.